So good morning, everybody, and welcome to the final day. And I think that previous conversation actually set up a lot of the motivation for why what we're going to be focusing on for the next 45 minutes or so. So just to introduce myself, I'm David Balshaw. I'm the director of the Division of Extramural Research and Training at NIEHS. So I oversee all of our grants program. But for those who have been part of the Exposome community for a while, you'll recognize that I've actually been leading NIEHS's efforts in exposure science and the exposome literally since before the exposome was a word. So we released our first solicitation that really tried to start to build the capability of measuring the exposome in 2006, just after Chris published that first paper. You know, and one of the things that I've been saying in recent years about the exposome is, you know, the magnitude of the problem is such that this is not something that any one investigator or any one investigative group or even a consortium like NIH or the European Commission would solicit, can tackle on their own. And, you know, as Thomas was framing at the beginning of the meeting, you know, we have an opportunity to learn from the lessons of the Human Genome Project and start this from day one in a mindset of partnership and collaboration that crosses borders and crosses sectors. So how do we address that 1090 problem? How do we break down barriers between academia and industry and government and private equity and other potential sources of funding to really take this, you know, 3.5 days of work that we've had and move this forward as a new area of science. So we've got a panel of experts from different perspectives that I think will kind of follow the standard. We'll give everybody a couple minutes to introduce themselves and share a couple thoughts. And then we'll have some kind of round robin discussion. And we've got a couple seated questions, but we also want to make sure that we give time for you, the audience, to participate in this conversation as well. So I think I'll start at the end, and we'll introduce Tina and let her say a couple words, and then we'll go from there.
Hold the mic. Yeah. So thank you so much, and I'm really pleased to be here. So thank you to the organizing committee for involving me in this fantastic program. So I'm here. I wear a few hats, and really, and I represent, I guess, the international perspective. I mean, born and bred in Canada, studied and lived in the States for about 8 years, but I've been in the UK for most of my life, and do quite a lot of international work, and a lot of it has been around driving system change. I mean, my real passion is system change, you know, taking a very broken healthcare model that we have in a lot of the parts of the westernized world in particular to one more rooted in prevention. So it's a colossal effort to drive system change because you have to engage, you know, multiple stakeholders who've got the power, the influence, the money, who are often very sort of rooted to the status quo for all sorts of reasons, and particularly because of perverse incentives that operate at every level of the system. So dismantling that is actually quite a challenge. So I learned an awful lot getting involved. It was my first sort of foray in the policy world, running the all-party parliamentary group for longevity, actually, in the UK, where we had the advantage of having a government manifesto commitment at the time, which was about increasing healthy life expectancy while minimizing health and well-being inequality. So the equity question was very much baked in at that point. And it allowed us to actually engage with stakeholders to actually derive and work on a system change map to really, how do we actually do this at a manifesto level. So that sort of catapulted me into really working quite critically with a lot of the big stakeholder groups. It involved me in the Healthy Aging Grand Challenge program with UK Research and Innovation. I did a lot of work on the impact of AI and digital technologies in the NHS, or public healthcare system, and also started a small social enterprise called Business for Health, where we're currently, and 4 years on from that, we're actually working very closely with the Office for National Statistics on looking at health metrics linked to economic growth, because of course in the UK we have the burning platform has arrived where our economic growth is being hampered by our very chronically ill population. So they're really focused on that as an agenda point. And I would say, just picking up on a couple of the points just made, I think there's a triple win here. We've got certainly the Human Exposome Project will certainly help to drive that system change approach to prevention, which, let's face it, is going to be tough to engage, certainly in the US and UK, for example. But it's also about, you know, the planetary health, and I would say economic prosperity prosperity. So it's a triple win. And if you want to engage with government and politicians, boy, the economic message is very, very important. And fundamentally, it is about the consumer push. So a lot of my work now that I'm doing is actually engaging consumers and the business world, recognizing the vested interest, which is often the elephant in the room, which has to be put on the table, because we do have a lot of vested interest in keeping a chronic disease model in operation in full flow. So we have to engage consumers. So a lot of the work I'm doing now with the National Innovation Centre for Aging in the UK, around the City of Longevity program, working with cities around the world, how do you get that sort of triple win approach, engaging citizens at the heart of this? And some of my work also with the International Institute of Longevity, which we're engaging at the sharp end of longevity science and people in the clinics, actually working with the punter to, providing all the latest sort of science and technology and longevity science. And of course, I'm here to show the link between that with the human exposome. We have to widen our focus away from what we're finding out in labs and animal models into the human experience. And my last point is I think the commercial sector is really, really important here. So I sit on the X Prize Global Visioneering team and pitched the idea for the next moonshot to be the Human Exposome Project in October. And it got a lot of attention. It didn't make it to the finals because there's a time and a place for these things. But I was really heartened that ever since then, there's a recognizing that there is a huge commercial potential to actually look at the personal exposome measurement. You can have that. And with the right guiding principles, recognizing the best interests around equity, for all, to make sure the science reaches everybody around the world. So the guiding principles and the governance structure is key to this, but there's a huge potential to get the commercial sector involved and engaging the consumer and that consumer push and drive. And, so I'll stop there, but really excited to be here. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Geoff Still. I'm the Executive Director of the Pediatric Brain Tumor Foundation, and I come to you with a little bit of a different approach. First, I want to thank you all for the wonderful conference that you're doing, the scientific work, the engagement with government agencies, and the interplay between technology as well. I come to you to talk about the individuals. We represent families, and foundations are a really good place that doesn't normally get a seat at this table, but it's an important component. What we do is we look at impact. For us, it's impact on children with brain tumors. And sadly, this week, I wrote an email this morning to my staff about 4 kids that passed away. Aiden and Harper and a couple other kids, and those are the realities of what we're dealing with. And so we are here to partner with you all. We are a multifaceted organization. We have family engagement, so we work directly with families on their journey and everything that they're going through. We have a research component. Many of the institutions that are represented here have received funds from us for research grants. And so we are your partners, maybe not in your lab specifically, but we are your partners, and we're here to continue to engage. And then we also have a policy and advocacy component. We've been to the Hill across the street quite a few times this year. We've interacted with actual drafting of bills and things like that. And so we see ourselves as a partner to you. And there's a greater good that's out here that you all are working on and we all are working on. And we want to encourage you to bring nonprofits to the table, foundations that can help you, support you, and that we think outside of the zone of our biases. We all get into our areas. So for me, it's pediatric brain tumors. And that comes about because I'm a dad of an affected son. And yet when we get into these groups and we start talking about the different things, if we can leave our biases off to the side, focus on our expertise and the expertise of those around us, we can be so much better. This is a collaboration. What we're working on, what this focus is a collaborative effort. And yet at the same time, we're going to compete against other organizations, other teams, things like that, because that helps us to be better and to be stronger and to actually increase our reach worldwide. One of the things I'm so excited about being here is hearing from people from India and the UK and all across the world, Africa, Those are things that really are going to impact our world. And it's not just our little community, but it's the greater community. And so community is something we focus on. We focus on our families and community. We focus on research and community, policy and advocacy and community. But at the end of the day, it's community. And so hearing the messages today from all of you all is so powerful. And we're just thankful to be invited to be a part of this, and do believe that the advocacy and policy that we bring, as well as the human interaction and the impact to families and their children in our aspect is so important.
Well, thank you. I'm Courtney Silverthorn. I'm the Vice President for Strategic Alliances and Innovation at the Foundation for the National Institutes of Health. So we are a 501c3 nonprofit, not part of the federal government, but we were established by Congress to support the mission of the NIH. And we do that in a number of different ways, but where we've really found our sweet spot since we launched in 1996 is through the design, fundraising, and execution of very large and frequently very complex public-private partnerships. And so we're looking for opportunities primarily in the pre-competitive spaces, because NIH is really good at working with a partner. They can sometimes do it with two, but really anything beyond that becomes prohibitively complex with the bureaucracy and laws and regulations that have to be followed. And so that's really where we come into the table. So we find opportunities to bring together the resources of the NIH that are aligned with the resources and objectives of large pharma companies, biotechs, patient groups, other foundations, and nonprofits. And we've done this for about 28 years, over $1.5 billion that we've raised in support of the NIH mission. Some of that has gone directly to the NIH. Some of it has been used to supplement NIH grants, and some of it has gone out through our own awards through the foundation. In addition to large pharma partners, we also have a very large portfolio of global health work in partnership with the Gates Foundation. And so thinking about the role of public-private partnerships and these large consortia in terms of the human exposome, what I really think about is really the opportunity to create almost consortia of consortia to really ensure that we're bringing international collaboration to the table from the forefront. So not just collaborations and consortia within the United States, but also looking at opportunities within, say, the European Union with the Innovative Health Initiatives, or IHI, with A-STAR in East Asia, and so forth. And I think that this is a really unique opportunity to find the overlap between these competing interests, and echoing something that Tina said earlier, that it is very important to have pharma and other private sector interests and support at the table. Pharma doesn't give us money because we are a charity. They give us money because we are working towards something that's going to ultimately benefit their interests and their bottom line, even though the specific work that we are doing is pre-competitive, and that's how we're able to get 10, 20 pharmaceutical companies to come together around a table where as soon as they step out our door, they are competitors again. But bringing those expertise and those dollars together so we have shared support, shared governance, shared interests for something that will not only benefit the field, which I think doing research for research's sake is interesting, but at the end of the day, how is it going to impact someone's life, either in the treatment of disease or in the promotion of health? And so those are the opportunities that I think really need to be taken into account as we're thinking about the structure of this effort, is what will the end goal for a person actually be, and how are we going to translate the work to something that benefits the end goal? And we can't do that without having the private sector at the table. So interested to hear the rest of the discussion. Thanks.
Hi, my name's Anil Bajnath. I'm a family physician, and I just want to say thank you. It's truly an honor and a privilege to be up here with everybody here today and this weekend, and all the amazing conversations that we've shared and relationships that we built. My background is in precision medicine. I'm the founder of a 501(c), the American Board of Precision Medicine. And our goals and initiatives are to basically train the future providers to start thinking along the lines of multi-omic N of 1 medicine. And essentially, I think partnering with, the private sector and all these other kind of additional resources are out there. There's already a American Academy of Environmental Medicine that has a framework and curriculum of assessing the exposome and, therapeutic plans and interventions to help support that. And how do we bring this information in a translational aspect so that we can actually start connecting those molecular dots and looking at the epigenetic impact that the exposome has on gene expression and disease progression. And this kind of was derived from some of the classes that I teach at George Washington University down the street. I teach a class on multi-omics and implemented that into my clinical practice. And, with the exposome, we're able, there's a few different labs that I use now where we can actually start looking at these different environmental exposures and not waiting for the perfect lab, the perfect assay, when there's already commercially viable physician, available labs for your patients. And measuring that total toxic body burden is very instrumental for looking at how that has a direct impact on, cytotoxicity, genotoxicity, measuring DNA adducts, and how that influences the pathophenotype of patients that are migrating towards cancer and accelerated biological aging. So I think that there's a lot of additional resources out there, and I've already tried to establish a partnership with the American Academy of Environmental Medicine, the Board of Precision Medicine, and I'm looking to recruit faculty that are interested in joining this initiative. Our curriculum is founded on multi-omics, systems biology, and network analysis. We're going to be hosting our first conference in San Diego, October 9th. Our keynote address speaker is going to be Dr. Lee Hood. And, basically just trying to lead this movement and momentum towards thinking along the lines of connecting the molecular dots and how we could accelerate the advanced translational integrative clinical applications to this N of 1 medicine for longevity purposes and everything else in between. So, thank you.
Get my mic out of the stand. So we also have three virtual participants today. So first I'd like to introduce from the European Union, the European Commission, Dr. Arjon van Hengel.
Okay, greetings from the other side of the Atlantic. I hope you can hear me.
Yes, we can. We can.
Okay, perfect. So my name is Arjon van Hengel. I'm the Deputy Head of Unit in the European Commission in the Unit of Health, Innovations and Ecosystems. So our activities focus on health policy and the research, support to research, so a lot of funding activities. So what I want to talk to you today is a little bit giving you an insight on how we're working with partnerships and how important that is in our activities. So first of all, I think that on the research that we are supporting and that we are trying to advance, it's of course important that we do that as a benefit of society. So in that sense, involving patients and stakeholders and society, citizens, is an important element. And on the other side, of course, we need to have the industry working with us as well, because there's the possibility next to academia and that they come up with the novel ideas and the novel products that can help us. So there's a lot of work to be done, of course, in the exposome, and I think it's important to join forces there, and their partnerships actually come in the focus. So we are working a lot with partnerships because, of course, we also have an experience on supporting transnational research projects because we're in the European setting here. So that also means that you have to work with partners from different countries to develop solutions that are not only fitting for one country, but for multiple countries. So that's again, making sure that what we're trying to support through research is of the benefit of patients, involves industry, and is suitable not just for one setting, but for multiple settings. So in that sense, again, partnerships are crucial. So we're working, for instance, in partnership with national authorities to develop tools to advance the research and to bring innovation in, for instance, in healthcare systems. because every healthcare system in Europe is different. So you cannot do that to develop something for one system only. If you really want to make an impact, you have to do that for multiple systems. So, and next to that, we're working together with the industry. It was already mentioned, the Innovative Health Initiative. So that is where, as a European Commission, so as the EU, we're working together with the health industry. That includes the pharma industry, but also the medtech, the imaging industry, it's all, to make sure that we have forces that are combined and that we can move forward in research and innovation and bring that one step closer, especially in the pre-competitive space there. So for us, partnerships are really crucial. So what was also mentioned in the session before, which when I logged on, I listened into it a little bit, is the One Health. And that again is an example of how you have to go across boundaries. So boundaries between human health, animal health, and health of the environment. And of course, the exposome is in that sense another very clear example that fits perfectly in this One Health approach. So I think we're dealing with trying to overcome boundaries between different countries, different systems, and also different life forms, let's say the environment, animals, plants, and humans. So in my opinion, moving forward with that, you can only make a real impact if we work through partnerships, because that allows you to join forces to save efforts also, because it gets rid of duplication, which is another important element. And you get, of course, a stronger basis to move forward for. So I'm happy to be invited in this session and to contribute to your interesting meeting.
Thank you very much. And our final two participants are both primarily academics, but also academics with an entrepreneurial spirit who have sought to move their intellectual capabilities into product development. So the first is Dr. David Furman from the Buck Institute for Aging and Stanford University, whose companies are Cosmica Biosciences and Edifice Health. So David?
Well, hi, everyone. It's a pleasure to be connected to you all. Hi, Gary Miller in the distance. I'm here in California. Hi, Tina. Tina has been a long time collaborating with us. We wrote a paper in Nature Medicine in 2019 with Gary, putting out the idea that inflammation is at the center of diseases. And we noticed that the exposome is a big player in triggering all of the inflammatory processes. My background is in human immunology, in data science and exposome. I lead the 1,000 Immunomes project at the Stanford School of Medicine and the AI platform at the Buck Institute. One of the questions that we've been trying to answer is, how do we measure the exposome in real time? And how do we learn from the variety of different things that we're exposed to as to how they relate to accelerated aging and multi-omics? So I'm pleased to hear that some of the individuals here are also looking at the same lens. I think one of the important things that we have discovered, and wearing my entrepreneurial hat, is that plastics, and we're all talking now about plastics, can accelerate many aspects of aging, including inflammation, reactive oxygen species. And we're now with two papers, one in Nature Aging that was accepted just a few days ago. Congrats to my team, on declining intrinsic capacity. And a decline in intrinsic capacity has been recognized as a disease in the ICD-11 by the WHO. We are working with the World Health Organization to capture different aspects of declining intrinsic capacity. One of the aspects that were very important in driving intrinsic capacity, it was the exposures. So we looked at exposome in multiple ways, in multiple cohorts. I believe in humans and not so much in mice. And so we look at human cohorts at length, UK Biobank, Health and Retirement cohort, the Toulouse study, the 1,000 Immunomes cohort that I've been the latest research we've been doing, it's a paper that's called Disease Age that can predict different ICD chapters using multi-omics, any omics that you can think of. And again, exposures are a huge player in driving those accelerated aging processes. And so recently I was involved in a collaboration with Holly Kaufman, who's the president of the Plastics and Climate Project. And I realized that plastics are not only affecting us as humans and other species in this planet, but also accelerating climate change. And so it's much more than we think. And there's so much to do here. Most of what I just said and what we've seen from large cohorts is cross-sectional. We have very little data that can tell us how exposures can lead to poor human health in a longitudinal fashion and understand the trajectories and processes. So I'm super keen to be part of this panel. With Tina, we've been thinking not only on tackling individual exposures, we have to think of the household, the workplace, the cities, the need of bringing stakeholders, policymakers, scientists, all of our environmental scientists, researchers in the field of aging in the same room. So I'm glad to be part of this effort. Thank you.
Thank you, David. And our final panelist is Dr. Manish Arora from the Icahn School of Medicine at Mount Sinai, but also the founder of Linus Biotechnology. So, Manish?
Dr. Balshaw, thank you, and thank you to the organizers for this opportunity. I apologize I'm not there in person today. Like Dr. Balshaw said, I wear two hats. I'm a professor and vice chair of environmental medicine at the Mount Sinai School of Medicine, but I also direct one of the programs that was set up by NIEHS under the HERE program, and I run the Exposome Laboratory along with Dr. Robert Wright, who's the chairman. I spun out a company called Linus Biotechnology from my NIH lab, and I'll just spend a few seconds to share that journey and how that's really a success story of how exposome science can be brought to market and can have an impact. My area of work deals with what I call temporal exposomics, which is measuring how the exposome, both what's outside our body and what's inside our body, operates at a very fine time scale. So not necessarily what we study in prospective cohorts, but at a much shorter time scale. On one platform, we generate or we measure 100,000 molecular signatures or so at an hourly resolution. So we create this massive data set of 100 million biochemical data points per individual. And we can then look at temporal dynamics, their rhythms, their patterns on the time dimension. Now, for me, this story started in a way what Dr. Balshaw said a long time ago through some NIH support and NIEHS support, even before the exposome was a word. And when you start developing this platform, of course, it takes many years, but at the end of the day, you know, the value of such a platform, the value of exposomic science writ large would be measured by the impact that we have. So my work diverged along two paths. One was to start developing a global map of temporal exposomics, and we are doing that. We are doing studies in Europe and multiple countries in Europe, in Asia, in the US, Mexico, Canada, and we are building this temporal exposome map. But that will lead to results, you know, maybe 10 years from now. How can I solve a problem now? How can I help those children or those patients that need help now and cannot wait for 10 years? So the area of impact we picked was mental health. And I picked mental health for two reasons. One is, if you take a condition like autism spectrum disorder and compare it to, you know, oncology, for example, you see how far behind mental health disorders are in terms of adopting precision medicine principles. Autism is diagnosed on a questionnaire. Compare that to what we are doing in oncology now. We sequence tumors. We do so much to come up with a treatment that is specific to that individual and the profile of their cancer. Whereas in autism, we barely have a biological definition. So fast forward over the last 3 years, as I've been working at this company, we developed the world's first biochemical marker for autism spectrum disorder that can detect autism as early as 1 month. Compare that to the median age of autism diagnosis in the US, which is about 4 to 5 years. So this is a big advance in early intervention. But really, this is not a success story for Linus Bio or for me. It's much more a success story for NIEHS and for the exposome community at large, because it shows that we are not just hoping to solve problems 10 years from now. We can impact patient health right now in the immediate future. And this product is out there. Hospitals and clinics are using it, but it's been a journey. Honestly, transitioning from academia to the private sector is not an easy journey. So I'll end by saying this: if there are trainees or early career faculty in the audience who want to take their academic discoveries to market, please reach out, because the least I can do is pay forward what all was given to me through the academic journey in the US and by NIEHS. So thank you again for including me here.
Thank you, Manish. So we do want to open up for some questions from the audience. So if you have some thoughts, some questions, please come to the microphones. But as people are migrating, I think one of the critical things that we want to discuss is how we walk that fine line of balancing. We want to do this in collaboration. We want to do this as a partnership. We want to do this as a unified whole. But we also recognize that many times the major driver of innovation, of transformation, is competition. So how do we balance that competitive, internal competition with a shared purpose and a shared commitment to achieving success in that? And Courtney, I think maybe you're best poised to start us on this conversation.
Yeah, thanks, because we walk that line every day in every single partnership that we do. So I mentioned earlier that we do try to focus on areas of pre-competitive growth. And I think one thing that will be really critical for this initiative going forward is thinking about what brings people to the table and what will motivate them to participate. And so when we bring pharmaceutical companies to the table, we're acting as a neutral convener for one. So, and we've built up that trust over 2.5 decades. But really, what we're offering is governance. So having the ability to participate in the direction of an individual partnership. For the grants and contracts that are awarded by the FNIH, for example, we have members of our steering committee from the private sector who are the reviewers and selectors. We keep that separate from the NIH processes, of course, but giving them, a say in the direction, the specific direction that a project takes. All of our partnerships go through what we call a design phase, and so there we have key opinion leaders from academia, from pharmaceutical companies, from the NIH, from nonprofits, who are all participating in the shaping of that specific partnership. And then the other thing that we do, we have a commitment to open access. So everything that is produced by an FNIH partnership is made as publicly accessible as possible. A lot of that is data, protocols, standardized resources, and so forth. But what the partners are getting is early access to those materials. So they're seeing them in real time, whereas the public might get them 6-12 months down the road. And a really great example of this is the Accelerating Medicines Partnership Program that the Foundation has managed since 2014. And with one very unusual outlier, these are a portfolio of projects that are focused on generating multi-omics data sets across a number of different disease areas. So Alzheimer's disease, autoimmune diseases, heart failure, et cetera. And we have developed this program over more than a decade, and those resources are available to the public through a number of different data portals. I can offer a cautionary comment about that too if we want to go there. But the partners have had the ability to use that data from the minute that it was produced and delivered to the steering committee, and so they can use those multi-omics data sets for target identification, or what we've heard more frequently, target de-identification. So sometimes saving money in a pharmaceutical company is just as valuable as making money. So those are some of the things that I think that can translate over into lessons for this initiative, is keeping that commitment to open access as much as possible, but still bringing something of value to somebody who has shareholders that they have to report back to.
Any other thoughts before we turn it over to Bob Wright?
I've got thoughts.
Tina.
I think competition is key. We are all driven, human behavior is driven by the need to compete. But I think what we need to do, and I think what is really important, is seeing this as a shared mission and actually really, really being clear on what the shared value proposition is, recognizing that every group who participates will have their own agenda, but the key to this is actually to define the sweet spot where you can actually accomplish everyone's shared agenda and use that idea of competition. I mean, one of the things that we're looking at is this idea of these test beds where you can actually test out what works in the context of this global mission. And I can tell you there are certain countries around the world that are going to be leapfrogging some of the more sort of familiar spots around the world, and I'm talking about UAE, Saudi. There are areas around the world that are absolutely get the exposome concept. They've got the resources and the vision and the ability to work really, really fast. So the fear of missing out, FOMO, is a tool that I use all the time in my professional world, and it works. And I think some of that is needed to actually get some of the policymakers, some of the other groups around the world to actually say, listen, take stock. Prevention pays, a prevention-based economy and society, which is how some of the other countries around the world are looking at it, is how we should be looking at these sorts of things. So I think it's co-opetition, and I think it's about harnessing it within the right vision and with the right guiding principles at the heart of it, with the governance structures in place that you alluded to.
I love that term. I'm going to co-opt that. So Bob, I think you're first.
I think Arjon has his hand up.
Arjon, sorry, I did not see the hand.
Okay, no worries. No, I think another thing to take into account is that a lot of competitive areas are growing out of pre-competitive areas, and that's something really important. So that's why, for instance, under the Innovative Health Initiative, what we're doing we're bringing together the competitive actors, like the big pharma industry, for instance, medtech industry, together with academics, with the expertise in their area, so that, and small and medium-sized enterprises, so that actually you can move the field a step forward, or maybe 2 steps forward. And that can give rise, of course, to new ideas that are then a kind of competitive spin-offs. So I think what is really important, if we want to have new products, new solutions and so on, even in a competitive area, you should bring the brains together at a pre-competitive stage already to actually get the field these steps forward, so that there's really a fertile ground for the competitive stage. And that, of course, we have different funding possibilities for competitive research also.
Thank you very much. Bob?
So my question does actually relate to competition. I'm not a capitalist by nature, but we've talked a lot about the positive economic influences or benefits of the exposome, and we've sort of not addressed what might be the elephant in the room that a lot of people are thinking about. There are very powerful economic forces that would rather the exposome goes away. You know, ultra-processed foods are really what's driving the interest in exposomics in the United States. Those are really big corporations with really deep pockets. I noticed the ACC is a sponsor of this meeting from the water bottle. The ACC has clients, I would bet, that include agricultural companies. So will competition be enough? Because one side is really heavily funded to actually overcome some of these barriers that I think very likely exist.
I think that that's a great point. You know, we are all here because our desire is to do good and make the world a better place, or at least would like to believe that. There are times where capitalism and making money isn't the only thing and isn't the great driver. We deal with kids that have diagnoses and there's not enough investment for them because the sample size of their tumor type is just too small to have a return on investment. But at what point is looking at return on investment not exactly the best approach? So I encourage you all, as you go through and you look at these things, competition is great, but sometimes it's competition of finding a solution that's more important than competition of finding a new business or a bottom line type component. And that's where academia and science really have a sweet spot because of the fact that the research components are there and the work that you're doing. And so as a foundation, we encourage you to do that. We exist to support you in that way. And there are so many other foundations out there as well. Bring them to the table and have them help you and keep you focused.
I'll make a very quick comment because I know we're running out of time. Again, look at the obesity crisis epidemic is literally dragging down the population health. In the UK, we actually have done the numbers, and actually this is what we are looking at in terms of regulation and support by government, looking at introducing more beefed up versions of a sugar tax, which was very, very successful at reducing the amount of sugar in fizzy drinks and so forth. Absolutely, the economics will show you why we need to be looking at the obesity epidemic much more closely, and the food lobby and the food system that is actually driving this. So this is where you need the governments and policymakers on side, and actually this is where the economics of what the Human Exposome Project will show. It will show that the obesity crisis, ultra-high processed food, this is actually killing us and actually dragging our health down and dragging our economic prospects down. This is really important.
I think one other really important point, I think, is that even capitalism responds to changes in the market and in the field of science. I think a really great example of this is the fact that ultra-processed food companies are now dealing with the reality of GLP-1 inhibitors and are now looking at ways to market foods that are high protein, high nutrient to that population. And so there's economic development to be had through this opportunity, even as forces might be pushing back against the scientific development.
Thank you. So we are running a little bit behind schedule, and we want to do a Menti before we go off. So I see two people at the microphones. So we'll capture those questions for the record, and then we'll turn it over to the Menti. Oh, and Manish has his hand up. Sorry. Manish, why don't you go ahead first? Very quickly.
I'll be very quick. I just want to say two things that haven't been mentioned so far. One is that competition cannot come at the expense of collaboration. I could say a lot more, but in the interest of time, I'll just stop at that point there. The second thing I will elaborate a bit is we're talking about the commercial sector, government, academia, but the one group that we are forgetting that, in my opinion, is the most important, that has huge economic power and influence, is the families. One of the first partnerships I established was with Autism Speaks in the Brain Foundation. All they do is represent families of children and autistic children. They have huge economic power because they are the ones who actually go to market. They are the ones who are going to be paying for the ultra-processed foods. So in all of this, if we want exposome science to be really successful and be really influential, we want to move policymakers, well, the biggest force is families, the people who vote, the taxpayers. And we should really start establishing collaborations and with them.
Thank you. So up top, just your question for the record.
Okay, thank you. My name is Kostas Stelos from the Heidelberg University in Germany. The question for the record is to David Furman. What is the role or the effect of exposome in aging-related effects in the cardiovascular system or other systems? This could be a nice argument to persuade stakeholders to support us. And to Anil, how do we use multi-omic-based information to treat patients today, and where are we going on? And maybe just a small comment, we call it Human Exposome Project. However, the environmental factors are global. They affect also animals, plants, geology, so we can get more stakeholders support.
Thank you for that. And Ozzy?
Hi. So we started the conference talking about trying to fill in the gap between the 30% contribution from the genome to the other 70% hoping to feel like chronic diseases. And many chronic diseases are not only multifactorial, but they're spectrums, right? Not every severity is the same for different people. And so as we talk about the exposome, we're essentially saying we're going to do some personalized approach to it, which moves towards an N of 1 for everyone because everyone's exposome fingerprint is distinct. So is there any lessons we can learn from another community that goes through that challenge in advocacy terms, like rare diseases and pediatric tumors, which they are tasked with the role of securing funding or rallying support when, again, the economic incentives are not there because we're talking a very small sample size, and to what extent do we believe the evidence that is produced on those terms?
With that, I think we'll end. Oh, is there one more? I'm sorry, I did not see you with the lights there. Sorry about that.
My name is Caspar from Utrecht in the Netherlands. And unlike Robert, I am by nature a capitalist, but also by choice. And so I was wondering whether there's lessons to be learned from projects like the Human Genome Project and others about how to create an innovation space that makes clear where companies can create products that allow them to have patents, make profits, and get an interest in improving exposomics.
Thank you for that last thought, Caspar. And with that, we'll thank our panelists. Great discussion, and I think I'll turn it back over to Michelle.